One of the things I wanted to do is, in meeting with members, it occurred to me how much or how little some chapter leaders actually knew about just the basics about IABC. And I always joke that we really stink at communication, which is ironic, but it's true. And I said, I just want to show them, like, this is the world, this is what goes on in IABC, and this is kind of a calendar year snapshot of the things that go on at headquarters on a typical year. What I'm going to show you doesn't even scratch the surface, but it gives you the big stuff, when there's a world conference, when there's an LI, certain deadlines, things that happen, kind of how we're structured. Just the background about IABC, we were formed in 1970 by the merger of two communication associations, one in the USA and one in Canada. And now our membership resides in roughly 70 countries. Some people say 80, I think it's closer to 70. We have a lot of at-large members that are not affiliated with any chapters around the world. We have 9 regions. I told you guys 8. We actually have 9 regions that help support chapters in their parts of the world, and some are more established than others. Some of the regions that you'll see cover a lot of turf around the world, but they don't actually have that many members. They just cover a lot of space and potential members. The southern region, which is where my chapter is located, is the largest in terms of chapters and members, because we have roughly 27 chapters in that region, and I forget how many members, but it's a majority of the membership global, just based on the way we're broken out. And it's weird, and I learned more about this recently, not just the southern region, but Pacific Plains, where your chapter is located. You kind of wonder why they're structured the way they are, because Pacific Plains, why would we structure all the chapters on the West Coast with some Midwestern chapters? I found out, typical IBC gossip, part of the reason it was done like that was because some of the groups under the old district structure didn't want to be broken up. So they had relationships. So like in my own region, where previously in our district we had chapters in Texas and the Midwest and some other places, there were strong relationships and friendships there, and they didn't want to be broken up. So what was originally presented as a logical way of breaking up different parts of the world didn't actually end up that way, for better or worse. And I finally learned from somebody who was actually involved in that process, and I went, okay, that's interesting. Anyway, that's why our regions are kind of weird, and you'll see that in a minute. All right, so the first region is Canada West, which includes, I can't remember all the chapters, but Vancouver, Regina, Edmonton. There's several in that area. And then the other side is Canada East, which includes our biggest chapter, Toronto, and of course World Conference is there this year. And Toronto is our largest chapter in the world, by the way. It's its own city. It has 1,700, actually more than 1,700 members. They actually have paid staff just to run their chapter because they can afford to. We do a lot of partnership events with them because they're so well structured. They have the finances to do a lot of those things and to ask for support from IABC. So we usually help them with that. But they're huge. And the interesting thing about Toronto is they have the same challenge that every other chapter has. In talking with their chapter leadership, they have trouble getting people to serve on the board. They have trouble getting volunteers to serve. So it doesn't matter how many people you have. There's some changing dynamic in the way that all associations, not just IABC, are structured, and some of the issues that chapters are having in trying to maintain the traditional chapter model. Okay, so then Heritage Region, which is the northwestern part of the United States, although Heritage dips down a little bit, which is, again, this is this weird, it's not, like Heritage Region includes Virginia and some places that some people might consider part of the South or the Mid-South or whatever. So that's the way we're structured. So next, all right, so Pacific Plains, your region. Yay! Yay, Pacific Plains. So that includes chapters in Oregon, obviously chapters in California, Utah. Strangely enough, it does not include Arizona, which is part of our region, even though I think of it more as west than southwest, or it includes Chicago, Minnesota. It's an interesting group of...
Not Denver. Right?
But not Denver. Denver's part of the southern region, inexplicably, because they were part of the old District 5. I don't think of Denver as south at all. So anyway. Obviously, I think everybody knows this. We're based in San Francisco, California. But one of the things we're looking at, it's outrageously expensive. It always has been. One of the things we're struggling with now is we've had extraordinary expenses, as you might imagine, over the last couple of years because of some things we knew about, some things we didn't. We had extraordinary expenses related to staff turnover and staff departures, not of their own choosing, under the previous CD. We've now rebuilt all that staff, but there were HR expenses related to that. Our IT infrastructure was literally crumbling, as some of you found out. I don't know if LA was impacted by that, but it was a really...
Not terribly.
Yeah, well, some were impacted terribly. What we found out is that the IT infrastructure had not been updated in years that I can tell, which makes no sense. But, so we had to make major investments in IT, get all those things shored up. We're 90% there on that part of it. There's all new servers now. Most of the chapters, I think, if not all, have been switched over if they wanted to be attached to our servers, so we're good there. Extraordinary expenses related to updating the website, and we had problems with that, but now we've found a vendor who's now underway. One of the issues that we have is because we're headquartered in San Francisco, the rent and everything else is crazy high. The single biggest office expense we have is the rent itself. On an annual basis is $430,000 a year. I know, that is the single biggest expense. Now you add on to that electricity and keeping the lights on, all this stuff, and then you got to pay benefits and all that. Now, we're also competing with salary ranges in the Bay Area. So it's very hard to attract people and pay a decent wage if they're like a junior level staff person in the Bay Area. It just is. And even senior level staff, in some cases, it's hard to compete. So one of the challenges we have now, the interim executive director has been looking at, could we sublease? Because there's unused space there. It's a beautiful office space. I mean, there's a view of the bay from the executive director's office, which blows my mind for an association. Why is it like that? I'm like, we're going to fix that. So our interim is from San Francisco. She's been working with a real estate person there that she knows to try to either sublease part of the space that's not being used, or can we move to less expensive space but in the same building. We've having some struggles with that. We thought we had somebody to sublease, and it didn't work out. The lease, unfortunately, is not up until, I think it's May of 2016. So we have 2 more years of this outrageously expensive lease, and we're trying to solve it. Anyway, so that's a big one. That's why I wanted to spend time on that, because it's very concerning to all of us. And as much as we all love San Francisco, it's not where we should be headquartered. It's insane. It's too expensive. So moving on from there, my region, the southern region, which is composed of all sorts of interesting areas. And this is completely selfish on my part. That's my current hometown, Dallas, Texas, has a lovely skyline. I am a raging, Lisa will appreciate this, Texas Longhorns fan, so that's completely irrelevant to the presentation, but I love my Texas Longhorns. There you go. The southern region inexplicably has the chapters in Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad Tobago. Woohoo! So that's the southern region includes the Midwest, the Southeast, the Southwest, and the Caribbean. It used to be worse. The Caribbean used to be tied to Canada. All right, so our big land of opportunity is South America and Central America. We have a fair number, I don't know the total quantities, but we have a fair number of we have a fair number of at-large members in Chile and Argentina, Brazil. We have some people in Mexico. They have their own association, AMCO, that we have partnered with on things, and they like keeping it that way, but they do like to be affiliated with us. The next region is Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. And that also includes the Russia chapter, because they're out there by themselves. The incoming chair who will succeed me in a couple months is Russell Grossman. London, England is his hometown. We have members in Africa now. We have people in Nairobi and other places, which is pretty amazing, and that those are growing areas for us. We also have strong chapter in South Africa. We have a presence in Asia Pacific. We have we have more than 3. We have 4 or 5 chapters in Australia. And of course, a gratuitous picture of the past chair, Adrian Cropley, with a koala, because that's what you do when you're in Australia. We also have chapters in New Zealand, but I didn't have any pictures, so I made it up. And we do have chapters in Japan. That's our Japan president, Kaz. Interesting fact, our first chapter outside of North America is the Philippines, oddly enough. They've been around for more than 30 years, which is surprising to me. They're very, very tiny, and they have more sponsors and more money than you can possibly imagine. I don't really know how they do it. This is their annual Phil Quill Awards, and you can see how elaborate that is. It's bigger than our Gold Quill. They have 1,000 people or more show up. They have the CEOs of companies show up to accept Company of the Year awards. You would never see that happen at IABC's Gold Quill. I mean, it like completely will blow your mind. And the awards get bigger as you get up to like the company that you can't lift the awards. They're so big. It's hilarious. They have like major airline sponsors. They have hotels. I mean, it's literally a gala. Like it would rival something you would see in Hollywood. It's phenomenal. All right. So that just gives you a quick overview of where we are in the world. I didn't even touch on how many chapters, but there are chapters in all of those areas, except in South America. We don't have any chapters there yet, or Central America.